Alex, you and I both received in the mail today a coordinated strike by Tracksmith, a nifty box, really nice packaging. Inside, lo and behold, the Tracksmith Eliot Racer, their provocative new shoe, a new super shoe on the market. Before we get into our first impressions of this shoe, let's tell a little story, Alex. We've got a little bit of a history and a little bit of a history of knowledge of this shoe.
This is a year in the making. Let's take it back to Boston last year. We're there for the marathon. I think this happened like the day before the marathon. So if you've ever been to Boston on that weekend, the entire city is overtaken, and we're walking down Newbury Street, and every store has transformed into some type of running pop-up. And we stumble into the Tracksmith lounge or pop-up, and we get to speaking with one of the main shoe engineers, or I think the main shoe engineer at Tracksmith. And he let us in on a secret that we had a hard time believing, saying that their super shoe was well in the works. And not only was it in the works, it was here and there in the wild, and early studies on the shoe by a third-party company was showing that it would be better than any other racing shoe out there.
I mean, that's a bold claim, right? Because you're looking at the little guy competing against Nike, Adidas, even Asics. Like these shoes companies have got very well developed super shoes with like bleeding edge technology and, you know, millions and millions of dollars and rosters of athletes at the highest level to test them out. So that was like a pretty bold claim from a pretty small company. And we'll get into our thoughts on why we think they're going down this road at this moment in the history of Tracksmith. But first, let's do first impressions. Give me one word or one phrase, your very first reaction when you looked at the shoe and you held the shoe in your hands.
So I have to say, I went home when I heard Michael got the box because I was working at a coffee shop and I was so excited. My phrase is prestige, I think. Prestige. It's a cool looking shoe. Even though Tracksmith calls it a pared down super shoe, it's got its undeniable bells and whistles that screams, this is a cool shoe if you can afford it and if you want to be a part of our club. So that, I don't know, it's a prestige shoe. It's got these little gold details to it. We'll get into the look. Why? Did you have a word? Did you have a phrase?
I have a phrase. And my phrase is, I want to like it.
Oh, yes. Okay.
I want to like it. And that could mean, I mean, that could cut a couple of different ways, but I want to like it. I think I'm meaning this as a compliment. I think, you know, I'm the one saying it because I was highly skeptical of this shoe. It's been rumored for a long time. I've seen it in action. I saw it at the U.S. Olympic trials early last year. It was on the feet of just a select few athletes. It didn't really do anything extraordinary in the U.S. Olympic trials that I can recall. Like, you know, it didn't help an athlete qualify for the Olympics in Paris last summer. And then they really struggled to get this thing to market and to iron out a lot of the kinks. And it was just hyped for a long time and kind of blowing in the wind for a long time. And now, lo and behold, it's out there. And Tracksmith has clearly spent a lot of money to hype it in the last few weeks. You know, if you've been paying attention to Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, you have seen this shoe floating around on the feet of many influencers. And so I was very skeptical of it. And I took it out of the box and I kind of want to like it. Like, there's a lot to like about it. There's a lot that's really quirky about it. And we'll get into that in a second here. But let's go into the specs first.
It's not really like any other shoe that's out there. So what I mean, its weight is about 7.7 ounces, which is similar to a Nike Alphafly, for example. But the size of it is quite a bit smaller than an Alphafly. So it actually looks smaller than it is, and we'll get into why that is. But it stands at a 38 millimeter stack height, which is under the max of 40. And most super shoes have gotten into the habit of capping it off at 40. So curious, that's a little bit smaller than it is, than it could be. And it's priced pretty expensively. $280 American, which, again, for context, I like to compare it to the Nike Alphafly, because the Alphafly is, probably the gold standard of what's out there in terms of what you can usually reliably find and buy, counting out the Adidas Pro Evo, which I think is faster, but it's really hard to find. So it's compared to the Alphafly. It's $5 less than the Alphafly, $30 more than the Adidas Pro 4, which makes you think that this should be one of the world-leading shoes. And here's the crazy part. Tracksmith claims on its website, and our friend in Boston told us the same thing, that this shoe, tested by a third party, is better than any other racing shoe out there. It's more responsive. It's got better energy return. That's an insane claim.
That is a wild claim, considering that the Alphafly 3 has both the men's and the women's marathon world record. The Adidas Pro Evo you've mentioned has won a number of marathon majors, the Olympic marathon, and so on and so forth, and is seen as bleeding edge tech. And then the most recent iteration of the Adidas Pro, the Pro 4, also a highly successful shoe. To me, this shoe, it scans to me that it sort of fits somewhere in the region of what you would see from with the Brooks Hyperion Elite. It almost feels like the same silhouette as that shoe in some respects, which to me was a decent performance shoe. I'm not sure I would go for it for a marathon, but it's got some pep, fun to run in a really hard, intense, fast workout, fun for a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon. But I start to wonder about its ability level at the marathon distance. But TBD, right? We'll see with this shoe. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about its unique design features, because there is one design feature in particular which I don't know if I've ever seen in a running shoe before, and it's totally fascinating, and it almost makes me want to believe in their claims because it's so weird.
Oh my God. Well, it's so well done. So they call it a drop-in midsole, which basically means you can rip the midsole out of the sneaker like you would just a regular sole. So you take out this nice curved slab of supercritical foam. You can hold it in your hand. Oh, and then you flip it around, and then there's this poem, this cult-like poem called "Race Day is Sacred." I'd read the whole thing, but it's like 3 paragraphs, so you're gonna have to look it up online. But this is a heck of a design. So you can take the entire midsole out, and it's kind of a fun experience because then you can look at what's inside of a super shoe below the midsole. So once the midsole's out, you see the carbon plate, which is also curved just like a regular super shoe, and then underneath this slab of supercritical foam. So it has the main bones of a super shoe, and then it has a bit more. And I think this is why I'm a little bit skeptical, and I can sense that you're a little bit skeptical too. You want to like it, you're not sure if you're going to like it. Super shoes these days have one of two superpowers, I guess. One of them is that they can be super light, like that Pro Evo. That's why the Pro Evo is fast. It's incredibly light. It's about 2.5 ounces lighter than the Eliot Racer. The other superpower, I think, is just straight up power, being incredibly powerful. The Alphafly 3 is a little bit heavier. It's the weight of the Eliot Racer, but it's incredibly powerful in the midsole. Whereas I'm not sure if the Racer has either. We'll have to try it on. Full disclosure, we just got these shoes, so we're going to try it on. We're going to do a proper review of it. But I wonder if the issue here is that there's a bit more to the shoe than you need, even if it doesn't look big and tall. First of all, what do you think of the treads underneath? There's a somewhat thick layer of tread that is probably for grip, but it feels a little bit heavy.
But on the flip side, you could argue that having that full slab of outsole rubber would mean that it's a little bit more durable a shoe. And I think that's one of the plays here that Tracksmith is trying their hand at, which is to say, I guess theoretically, with the outsole being more durable, with it looking like the upper is like pretty well constructed and pretty, I'd say pretty rugged as well. And then you've got this big slab of supercritical foam that you can take out like a big giant insole. Theoretically, you could replace this. And I think that was one of the propositions very early on with this shoe, that you could actually like sub this insert out for something slightly different, or a refresh, a new one, if you felt like it was losing its pop. Because fundamentally, like this secondary slab of supercritical foam, the P-backs on the bottom here, could hold up for quite a while. And then you've also got, of course, the carbon plate, which will be fine. I guess in theory, if you could replace this insert, it becomes a really durable super shoe, which is not, durability and super shoe are not two things that you commonly put together. What about the upper here? I mean, is this over engineered? Is there too much here? There's some stitching. There's this big gold stripe, which is, Tracksmith style, right? It screams, this is a Tracksmith shoe, of course. There's two colorways. There's ivory and gold, and then there's navy and gold, and both very traditional, very sort of like Northeastern elite Ivy League vibes, very Tracksmith.
Yeah, my other phrase other than prestige was going to be Connecticut, but I didn't know how to put that in the pod. So yeah, I think the upper follows that same theme. You can tell there's at least like 2 or 3 different layers of stitching. It might be that Tracksmith could have made a shoe that's a whole ounce lighter, but they chose not to enhance durability. You just made me think of something. Like, why do super shoes go bad? 1, their tiny little upper mesh gets ripped, or
yes.
2, the supercritical foam just craps out because you've used it enough, or 3, the fact that they have no tread makes them super slippery and done at the bottom. And it seems like Tracksmith might have an answer to all of these 3 things. So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, it might be, I guess, with a brand like Tracksmith, I expected a shoe that looked nothing like what's out there. And I do think that the more you look at the Eliot Racer, the more that it falls into that role. It's not like other shoes. It's got a few distinct features that I think if they were much faster altogether, we'd know about it by now. Someone would have gotten a hold of it and won a world marathon major. That hasn't happened, so that is still my skepticism, but that doesn't mean it's not a good shoe. It's also hard to put a Tracksmith shoe on the feet of the best marathoners in the world. They're already with Nike, Asics, and Adidas.
All right, final question for you. Why do you think Tracksmith, like why a super shoe? Why now for Tracksmith?
Tracksmith brands themselves as the amateur runners brand, and super shoes have become commonplace enough to permeate the amateur runners world. To me, that's it.
Yeah, I think that they have kind of hit a bit of a ceiling as a brand right now. They're a private company, so you have no idea what their sales figures are like or how well they're doing, what the health of the company is. This was a very expensive investment for them to develop this and to roll this out, and obviously very time consuming because it's taken them well over a year to get this thing off the ground, and then all the development that came before that. And it does seem like a fairly well thought out product, although a really unusual one. So this is a big risk for them, I would say. And I think for them, it's because they're probably feeling a lot of pressure from other startup brands that have come up in the last couple of years, sort of in their wake. And I can think of any number of them right off the top of my head, which is something that I couldn't say a decade ago when Tracksmith first came onto the scene. So Tracksmith have sort of invented this new subcategory, this sort of the indie darling category of running. And now that there are many competitors for them for apparel, they needed to grow. And they're a company they've taken a lot of private money. They've taken a lot of venture capital money. And so they need to deliver on that investment, right? And I guess it's up or out, baby, and this is it, right? So yeah. I'm very curious to see how this shoe performs. I'm very curious to wear the shoe. I'm itching to wear this shoe tonight, like for my next run, which I I suppose is a promising thing for this shoe. So
Yeah.
we'll do a full review. We're going to rip through these pairs and run the heck out of them. I think because, like, I don't know about you, Alex, but I really want to wear the shoe and see how it feels. It seems like a legit shoe. So I'm excited about it. And then we'll do a complete teardown, a full review of this shoe in the next couple of weeks after we get the time to test this thing out.
Yeah. At the very least, if I don't wear it tonight, I'm going to read the paragraph under the midsole for a little bit of motivation. Training doesn't happen in a vacuum. We push over some workouts. Wow. Okay. All right.
And we'll leave it at that. And we will make sure to include a link to the full review when it is up. And all right. Until next time, Alex.